Hey guys, tonight we slip into the silver-lit world of 18th century Zulu lore as you trudge through tall grass, your lanterns glow dancing off dew-kissed blades. You probably won't survive this without a few good jokes. So here's one. Why did the herb refuse to party? It didn't want to get picked. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now post your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You navigate a narrow footpath at the foot of gentle hills, each step cushioned by damp earth that yields under your boots. The moon peeks over the horizon, its pale disk brushing the clouds in a slow, deliberate sweep, casting long shadows that flicker like silent sentinels. You adjust the satchel slung across your shoulder, sturdy hide stitched by a grandmother with arthritic hands, and check your mantra scroll ink slightly smudged from last month's rain. Historians still argue whether these mantras began as simple lullabies or elaborate invocations to ancestral spirits, but tonight yours will guide each careful movement. You pause to inhale deeply. The air is rich with the scent of wet grass and distant smoke, a mainstream historical fact telling you that Zulu healers routinely built small sacred fires to ward off nocturnal predators. Firelight crackles somewhere ahead, and you smile to yourself. Fire and herbs go together like peanut butter and, well, more herbs. That's joke two right there. Moving forward, you catch the rustle of your own satchel's contents, cloth bundles, leather-bound jars, and a small gourd of water. You pat the flip-side pouch containing iron tongs essential for plucking prickly plants without a painful surprise and mutter, "I'm quite the charmer, aren't I?" As a fringe tidbit, some healers believe the clink of iron rang hollow in this moonlight, scaring away mischievous sprites intent on spoiling the harvest. A cool breeze brushes your neck, and you recall a mainstream note. Zulu moon gardens were often sited near hilltops to catch the faintest lunar rays, maximizing herb potency. You step off the path onto the ridge and gaze down at the valley. Now a painting in chiaroscuro, inky hollows, and bright patches where moonlight strikes. The air feels thinner here, each inhalation crisp like a whispered secret. You unzip your satchel and pull out a small carved wooden talisman, an ancestral emblem handed down through generations. It's smooth against your palm, worn by countless fingers, its edges softened by time. You murmur the first lines of the mantra, voice low and rhythmic. Scholars still argue whether the talismans serve as protective charms or mnemonic devices for ritual sequences. But for you, the weight of tradition is as real as the thumping of your heart. A distant hoot of an owl breaks the hush. You smirk. Great, my fellow night shifters here for the show. That's joke 3 right on cue. Your boots sink slightly with each step as you descend toward a cluster of silverleaf sage, your first target of the night. Stop, stand, breathe. This moment spells the difference between a successful herb gathering and waking up tomorrow with a stiff back or worse. You check your satchel's contents again, verifying the gourd, the tongs, the small clay bowl for storing cuttings. The ragged edge of a crude map pokes out a modern aside tucked beside ageless lore, guiding you toward the sacred moonlit grove. You glance skyward. A few clouds drift past the moon, waxing into shapes that might be animals or your imagination on a long night. A mainstream fact drifts through your mind. Zulu healers timed their harvest to the 5th night after full moon, believing potency peaked. Then, you glance at your talisman-turned calculator, but it's more tactile than digital. No alarms to remind you, only instincts honed over countless gatherings. Your footsteps slow to a measured pace as you near the grove's edge. The air grows cooler and the scent of night-blooming jasmine drifts in a quirky fragrance that few healers mention in their scrolls yet. It clings to your senses, promising subtler cures for sleeplessness. You pause at the threshold, satchel heavy with anticipation, heart beating in sync with the world's ancient pulse. You step into the grove, silver light filtering through a canopy of leaves that seem to glow from within. The ground is soft, carpeted in fallen petals and moss, each footfall releasing delicate scents. You feel a thrill. This is where preparation pays off: correct gear, proper mantra, and the right mindset. And a dash of sarcasm to keep you awake. Lean forward. Secure your satchel. Breathe in the night. You are ready to gather moonlit herbs. You step deeper into the grove, lantern held aloft, its warm glow mingling with pale moonbeams as you approach the fire circle carved from smooth river stones. The crackling flames cast dancing silhouettes on nearby trunks, and you crouch beside the hearthhead, bowed in a silent greeting to the ancestral spirits who cradle this land. Historians still argue whether these fires originated purely as protective beacons or as focal points for spirit communion, but tonight you'll treat it as both a radiant hearth and a sacred portal. Joke 1. Why did the spirit refuse to sit by the fire? It was too spirited for open flames. You smile, your voice a soft murmur that ripples across the night air. Beneath your hand, the cold stone rings with the echo of centuries, a mainstream fact reminding you that Zulu healers routinely inscribed spirit petitions on stones before lighting ritual fires. These stones, smoothed by rivers and chosen for resonance, served as amplifiers for voices carried on smoke. You retrieve a small bundle of frankincense and myrrh from your satchel, its resinous aroma rising in wisps that swirl around the fire. The scent is grounding, an olfactory handshake between earth and sky. Fringe whispers among some healer circles claim that the smoke's pattern mimics cosmic constellations, guiding wandering souls back to the ancestral realm, though skeptics dismiss this as fanciful speculation. Historians still debate whether these aromatic offerings were primarily medicinal or symbolic, but the bittersweet perfume reassures you. Joke 2 slides out in a whisper. It's kind of like using scented candles, but for ghosts. You're pleased with yourself. You sprinkle a pinch of resin onto the glowing embers. Tiny sparks leap upward, carrying incense-laden smoke to mingle with the mist that clings to gnarled roots. You close your eyes and recite the opening lines of your mantra, voice steady and calm. The syllables roll from your tongue like gentle waves, each one weaving a thread between your consciousness and the unseen world. A slight breeze rustles leaves above, and you incline your head in reverence. Mainstream records note that Zulu healers often conducted spirit invocations on nights when the moon appeared particularly luminous, believed to be when the veil between worlds thinned. You lift your gaze, the full moon hovers like a guardian overhead, its light seeping through swaying branches. A fringe tidbit: some elders claim that if you whisper your name into the smoke thrice, the spirits will guide your hands to the most potent herbs, though no written source confirms it. You open your eyes, lantern, reflecting in the smoky haze, and set the wooden talisman beside the fire. It gleams softly, its carved figures seeming to stir in the flickering light. You place one palm flat on the talisman, the other on your chest, and you feel the thrum of tradition pulsing through your veins. Scholars still argue whether such tactile connections were designed to awaken ancestral memories or to serve as mnemonic devices for ritual order. And honestly, you're fine with either explanation as long as it works. Joke 3 drifts out. If only my Wi-Fi worked this well. You chuckle, and the fire seems to answer with a low, crackling compliment. Rising quietly, you pour the last of your gourd's water into a shallow clay dish and dip 2 fingers into its cool depth, then flick droplets into the flames. The hiss is sharp, and you whisper, "This one's for you, Grandma." You imagine her nodding approval, a flicker of pride under parchment-thin skin. You step back, circling the fire, and feel the grounds rumble, an almost imperceptible tremor that you recall is a mainstream marker of Earth's subtle response to ritual. Zulu healers believed the earth itself bore witness to sacred ceremonies, offering blessing through gentle tremors. A fringe notion holds that these tremors aligned healers' energies with ley lines, crisscrossing the land. Though mainstream scholars remain skeptical, historians still debate the Earth's role in ritual efficacy, but you accept the quake as a reassuring sign. Kneeling once more, you scoop a bit of ash from the hearth and trace 3 protective sigils in the air above the flames, each line dissolving into smoke as soon as it's drawn. You murmur a soft caution. Don't get carried away, this isn't modern art. You grin at your own sarcasm. The grove falls into hushed reverence, only the fires crackle and your breathing filling the space. With a final bow, you collect the talisman and water dish, tucking them back into your satchel alongside your warming heart. The ancestral invocation is complete, and you feel the night's energy pulse stronger, as if stars themselves dip closer to watch your progress. A mainstream note anchors you. These complete spirit invocations were thought to guarantee safe passage through any darkness until dawn's first light. You stand lantern steady and feel your shoulders relax. The fire's warmth lingers, but your mind is cool and clear, an ideal state for herb hunting under a watchful moon. You slide off the grove's clearing and follow a faint trail marked by carved totems that point toward the silverleaf sage patch. Every step feels guided, purposeful, as though the spirits themselves are shepherding you toward moonlit blooms. You step back into shadow and your lantern's glow dims its edges. A hush returns to the grove, but you walk with renewed assurance. The invocation may be complete, but its echoes will remain a steady hum beneath your thoughts, guiding each harvest. You breathe in deeply, sensing the herbs waiting just ahead. You move silently through the grove's perimeter lantern, swinging gently at your side, its light revealing a carpet of fallen petals and moss beneath your boots. The air tastes of midnight dew, and Earth's cool breath drawing you toward the heart of this moonlit sanctuary. Historians still argue whether these groves were naturally occurring or painstakingly cultivated by early Zulu lineages, but tonight you trust your instincts to guide you to the perfect harvest spot. As your feet brush aside low-hanging branches, you spot twin ebony trunks framing a small clearing. A sliver of moonlight spills between them, illuminating pale clusters of silver-leaf sage shimmering like dewdrops frozen in time. You pause, a heart lifting. This is the grove you came for. Joke one floats from your lips. Talk about a sage location. You can't help but grin, though you immediately hush yourself. The whispers of the woods are easily startled. You kneel on the soft ground, brushing away fallen petals to expose the sage's silvery leaves. Mainstream lore tells you that silverleaf sage was revered for its antimicrobial properties. Zulu healers used it to cleanse wounds and purify the air. You reach into your satchel for the slender iron tongs, its cool metal pressing into your palm. Fringe accounts claim that sage harvested under a blue moon held triple potency, though scholars still debate whether lunar color truly affects herb chemistry. You align the tongs around a cluster of leaves and with careful precision snip just above the woody stem. Each cut feels significant, like severing a tiny thread connecting the plant to its root. You collect 3 sprigs, no more, no less, honoring an ancestral guideline that oversaw sustainable harvests. You tuck them into your cloth bundle, tying a loose knot to allow air circulation. Joke 2 drifts in a soft whisper. Don't leave me hanging. Rising slowly, you scan the grove for the next target. Moonbeams filter through the canopy, spotlighting patches of wild mulberry with leathery leaves, another candidate for tonight's gathering. You recall a mainstream fact: mulberry's young leaves were sometimes brewed into fever-relieving teas. You crouch by the mulberry cluster, inhaling its earthy, sweet scent. A fringe belief suggests that if you speak kindly to the plant before harvesting, it yields more potent medicine, though academics remain unconvinced. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or confined to select healer families. You lean in close, murmuring, "Nice foliage you've got there." You snip a few leaves, careful not to strip the branch bare. Each leaf you collect is slid into a separate compartment of your satchel to prevent cross-contamination. You pause to savor the texture, cool, pliant, and downright graceful under your fingertips. A rustle to your left makes you freeze. The faint silhouette of a grazing duiker slips across the moonlit floor, its large eyes reflecting silver light. You hold your breath. Wildlife patrol these groves, and upsetting them risks spoiled herbs or worse. Mainstream records note that Zulu healers often worked in pairs to deter curious animals, but tonight, you venture solo, banking on your careful silence and that trusty talisman. Fringe whispers speak of healers binding small charms to trees, emitting frequencies that deter creatures, a technique skeptics still debate. You let out a quiet sigh of relief as the duiker melds back into the shadows. "Guess I'm the only noisy one here," you joke under your breath. You press on, scanning for a patch of ghost root rhizomes hidden among ferns. Historians still argue about ghost root's origins, whether it was an indigenous discovery or introduced through early trader exchanges, but its reputation as a fever remedy is undisputed. Spotting a cluster of delicate fern fronds, you kneel and gently clear the undergrowth. Beneath the damp soil, pale rhizome tendrils emerge, knotted like tiny serpents. You grab your small wooden trowel, a modern aside, tucked into your ancient toolkit, and loosen the earth around 3 healthy-looking rhizomes. The soil clings to their pale skin, and you hum a quick charm to ward off soil-borne pests. Dirt meet destiny. Fringe lore claims that lifting the rhizome under direct moonlight increases its cooling properties, though mainstream chemists still debate the effect of nocturnal harvesting on alkaloid concentrations. You wiggle each rhizome free, feeling the slight tug as earth releases its grip. You inspect the first root, noting a subtle sheen, an encouraging sign you learned to spot during training. You rinse the roots briefly in your gourd of creek water, letting droplets dance across their crevices. Ashore, you place them carefully in a clay bowl, labeling each with a flick of ink on a parchment strip. Joke 3 surfaces, rooting for these to work. Standing, you shake loose clods of earth from your boots and survey the grove. The moon is now at its zenith, casting a milky glow over everything, as if blessing your careful work. You feel the weight of tradition in each carefully harvested stem leaf and root, a blend of respect, necessity, and a dash of sarcasm to keep the night lively. You glance back toward the fire circle and the carved totems that guided you here. Their silent watch is reassuring, a reminder that the spirits have approved your selection. You gather your tools, tongs, trowel, clay bowl, and stow them methodically, leaving the grove as undisturbed as possible. Each site you visit must remain fertile for future healers. You take a final breath of that cool, fragrant air before turning your steps toward the next gathering spot deeper within the grove. Ahead, patches of silverleaf sage begin to fade into ferns, and low shrubs promising new discoveries and more midnight conversations with ancient plants. You lift your lantern higher and step forward into the waiting darkness, knowing that the heart of the grove and the heart of your quest lies just beyond. You step into a moonlit clearing, where clusters of silverleaf sage sway gently, their pale foliage glowing, like ghostly mirrors under the sky's cool gaze. You pause, inhaling the herb's distinctive aroma, a combination of eucalyptus and damp stone, letting it ground you. Historians still argue whether silverleaf sage first grew wild in Zulu territories or was introduced via early trade routes, but its prominence in healing lore is undisputed. Joke 1 drifts from your lips as you crouch. Talk about reflective personalities. You grin at your own pun but keep your voice low. These leaves respond to soft handling. You pull the iron tongs from your satchel, its metal edges worn smooth by countless gatherings. The tongs feel reassuring in your hand, heavy enough to steady quivering fingers, but light enough for delicate snips. You lean closer, brushing your fingertips over a leaf surface. Mainstream lore credits the fine hairs on silverleaf with antiseptic properties. Zulu healers smeared crushed leaves onto wounds to stave off infection. You lightly press the leaf between thumb and forefinger, noting its velvety texture and slight flex under pressure. Fringe stories whispered among some elder circles claim that if you hum a lullaby while touching the leaf, its healing energy doubles. Though modern scholars still debate the power of melodic resonance on plant compounds, joke 2 comes out in a whisper. Guess these sages really know how to rock a soft touch. You snip one of the larger leaves, careful to cut just above a node to encourage regrowth. 3 leaves go into your cloth bundle, no more, no less, honoring ancestral guidelines that emphasized conservation. You tie the bundle loosely with a strip of bark, allowing air to circulate and moisture to escape. You stand and circle the patch, surveying the plant's varied sizes. Some grow close to the ground, their rosette formations catching dew in tiny pools. Others stretch skyward, stems sturdy enough to support multiple leaf clusters. Mainstream records note that healers preferred mid-height plants old enough to yield potency, but young enough to regenerate quickly. You spot a promising trio of mid-sized specimens and approach them with reverence. Cradling one stem in your palm, you inspect its scent more deeply. The aroma shifts slightly. A sweeter top note hints at menthol, suggesting a richer oil content. Fringe lore holds that the finest sage for respiratory tonics appears when the moon aligns with the Mzimvubu constellation. Yet debate continues on whether star alignments truly affect biochemistry or merely guide ritualists' timing. Historians still argue whether such celestial linkages were symbolic aids or practical harvest directives. Joke 3 escapes as you prepare to cut sage advice. Don't underestimate a soft leaf. You snip 2 more stems each precise cut, producing a faint hiss as internal oils release. You recount to yourself a mainstream fact sage. Leaves contain thujone, known for its antimicrobial action, though too much leads to headaches, hence the careful counting of sprigs. You ensure an even 3-sprig harvest, mindful not to strip the plant bare. Pausing. You wipe dew from your brow and glance around. Moonlight dances across foliage, revealing emerald and silver contrasts. The grove feels alive, each plant a silent participant in your gathering. A fringe anecdote surfaces. Old-timers say that if you accidentally drop a leaf, the plant forgives you if you whisper Uxolo Zulu for sorry. Though skeptics debate the necessity of verbal apologies to vegetation, you press the bundled sprigs gently to your chest and inhale their combined fragrance, a soothing balm that settles your mind for the deeper quest ahead. You tuck the bundle securely into your satchel's designated herb compartment, separated with neat parchment dividers to prevent mingling of scents. Modern aside, this method borrows from colonial-era apothecary techniques, yet feels oddly at home in your ancient toolkit. Standing upright, you scan the clearing's edges for the next targets. Ghost root rhizomes and wild mulberry leaves await deeper in the grove. But before moving on, you pause to offer a silent nod to the silver-leaf sage, acknowledging its role in countless remedies. You picture centuries of healers kneeling exactly where you stand, their rituals echoing in your bones. Taking one final breath of that cool herb-scented air, you secure your lantern and tighten your cloak against the night breeze. You step away from the sage patch, footsteps soft on moss-dappled ground, ready to seek out the pale, knotted ghost root rhizomes, hiding beneath ferns and fallen leaves. You slip between ferns and low shrubs, moonlight dappling your path as you hunt for the elusive ghost root rhizomes. The air here feels denser, heavy with earthy musk and faint floral undertones. Historians still argue whether ghost root Mfefo rhizome was originally indigenous to Zululand or brought from farther north. But your focus tonight is unearthing its knotted power beneath the soil. Joke 1 drifts as you kneel on soft earth. Looks like the roots of all evil are buried here, or maybe just great medicine. You pry the leaf litter aside, revealing pale fingers of root twisting like miniature serpents. Mainstream lore credits ghost root with antipyretic properties. Zulu healers brewed it into cooling decoctions to bring down high fevers. You smile, imagining yourself as a root DJ, spinning the hottest beat against fever's dance floor. Retrieving your wooden trowel, you scoop gently around a cluster of 3 promising rhizomes. You work slowly, careful not to nick the delicate skin. A damaged ghost root spoils its potency, much like popping a balloon before the party begins. Fringe whispers among elder circles claim that the roots glow faintly under a blue moon, though chemists still debate whether nocturnal light affects photosensitive compounds. Historians still argue whether such tales arose from genuine observation or creative storytelling. Joke 2 comes quietly. Rooting around here is my idea of a wild night. The soil yields easily, revealing 3 firm ivory-hued rhizomes. You lift them from the earth, brushing away clinging dirt with your gloved fingers. Their texture is firm, yet pliant, like candle wax warmed by body heat. You hold each up to the moonlight, inspecting for slight sheen, a mainstream indicator of high essential oil content used in fever balms. You place the rhizomes in your clay bowl, then reach for your gourd of creek water. You rinse them, water droplets dancing across twisted crevices and pooling in tiny cavities. Fringe lore asserts that waiting for moonlit dew to wash the roots preserves microscopic alkaloids. Though mainstream pharmacology remains skeptical, scholars still argue whether harvesting techniques or plant genetics play the greater role in ghost root's efficacy. Joke 3 surfaces as you pat the bowl. No need for a spa day. These roots got the full moon treatment. You let out a soft chuckle, and the hush of ferns seems to respond with a gentle rustle. Satisfied, you set the bowl aside and tie a small parchment label around one rhizome's slender tip, ink smudged but legible, marking them fever's bane. You rise and glance around, scanning for the next herb. Patches of wild mulberry peek through fern fronds, broad, glossy leaves promising soothing teas. Mainstream texts note that mulberry leaf infusions helped cool the blood and reduce inflammation, a practice still cited in contemporary herbal compendiums. You step toward the mulberry trowel, slipping back into its leather sheath. Between 2 mossy stumps, you find a cluster of well-formed leaves. You crouch, brushing away debris before snipping 3 leaves with your iron tongs, each cut deliberate, ensuring the branch remains healthy. Fringe tales suggest whispering a blessing over the cut stem encourages regeneration, though historians still argue whether healers truly practiced botanical blessings, or if this was later embellishment. You lean in and murmur softly, "Grow strong, my leafy friends," feeling a playful connection to ages of practitioners. You bundle the mulberry leaves separately, tying them with a thin vine to prevent mingling with ghost root's earthy aroma. You tuck the bundle into your satchel, its sweet scent mingling faintly with the cool moss underfoot. A modern aside crosses your mind. Colonial botanists later classified mulberry as Morus alba, likening it to Asian species, though Zulu healers used local Morus mesozygia with distinct properties. Moonlight shifts as clouds drift overhead, casting rolling shadows that slide across your tools. You pause, checking your talisman, still tucked beneath your cloak, its carved surface warm against your side. An ancestral reminder: never overharvest. Leave enough for the grove to thrive. You step back, respecting the fragile balance between human need and nature's generosity. Ahead, fern fronds part to reveal a small hollow near the creek bank where water collects. Here, you know, healers once performed a purification rinse, tonight's next task. Mainstream accounts describe how damp ash from the fire mixed with creek water created a cleansing solution for both hands and herbs. You gather a handful of cool creek water in your gourd, planning to blend it with fine ash later. You take a moment to breathe, letting the grove's nocturnal symphony fill your senses. Distant frog calls, the whisper of wind through branches, and your own steady heartbeat. A fringe notion lingers. If you hum a healing tune while kneeling here, the water's energy amplifies, though critics dismiss it as poetic fancy. Historians still debate whether rhythmic elements were integral to healing or mere ritual flourish. Standing, you reposition your lantern at the hollow's edge and set down the clay bowl. You scoop a ladle of water, considering whether to add ash now or after your final harvest. You decide to wait, preferring to keep herbs separate until drying. With that decision made, you gather your tools, tuck the bowl back into your satchel, and tighten the satchel strap across your chest. You glance at the moon's reflection in the creek. A pale orb beneath the sky's orb. A poetic reminder of cycles and mirrors. You inhale deeply, savoring the mingled scents of sage, ghost root, and mulberry. Your heart slows, steady and content, knowing the grove's gifts are nearly complete. You lift your lantern and step away from the hollow, ready to pursue the final whispers of night's herbal bounty in the grove's deeper shadows. You step into a part of the grove where moonbeams dance through shifting leaves, creating a dynamic tapestry of light and shadow. Your lantern's glow is steady but pales in comparison to the moon's silver brushstrokes. Historians still argue whether Zulu healers purposefully selected sites with dappled illumination or simply adapted to wild landscapes, but tonight, you weigh the merits of harvesting in full brightness versus the softer half-light of dusk for maximum potency. Joke 1 drifts as you survey the clearing. It's like choosing between spotlight and mood lighting herbal edition. You let that thought settle. Shadows here aren't just for aesthetics, but may actually influence herb chemistry. Mainstream lore notes that plants under fluctuating light often produce higher concentrations of certain oils, an adaptive response to stress. You glance at a patch of ghost root tendrils peeking from beneath ferns, candidates for your next harvest. You crouch beside a fallen log, brushing moss aside to reveal pale, silvery shoots. The log's contours cast slender lines across the roots, and you wonder whether to wait a few minutes for a fuller moonbeam or snip now before clouds roll in. Fringe whispers claim that herbs cut in shifting light develop a more balanced alkaloid profile, though chemists still debate whether light variance truly alters active compounds. Historians still argue whether these beliefs arose from observation or evolved as ritual justifications. Joke 2 surfaces quietly. I feel like a DJ mixing tracks, light beats and dark beats. You steady your trowel and in a swift movement loosen 3 ghost root rhizomes. Each root gleams faintly, where the moon touches its surface, confirming your choice to act when light and shadow wove their best pattern. You lift them from the earth, imagining they thirsted for that precise moment of shifting illumination. You rinse them in your gourd droplets, catching both lantern and moonlight in tiny prisms, then set them in the clay bowl. Stepping back, you scan for silverleaf sage. Patches of pale leaves glow softly under leafy lattices above, creating pools of half-light that beckon you. Mainstream accounts describe how sage harvested in full moonlight held stronger antimicrobial strength, but some healer lineages insisted that partial shade prevented leaf scorching, leading to fresher, milder oils. You approach a small sage bush still bathed in both shadowed shade and pale highlights. You draw your iron tongs and snip 3 mid-sized leaves, careful to cut from stalks balanced between light and dark. Each leaf falls gently into your cloth bundle, its surface modeled by moonlight patterns. Fringe lore contends that variegated leaves, those with patches of light and dark, warped under moon-shadow interplay, possess dual healing qualities, invigorating and calming at once. Scholars still debate whether this duality holds any scientific basis or if it's pure metaphor. Joke 3 drifts out. Who knew plant photography tips would double as herbal wisdom? You stow the sage sprigs next to your ghost root collection, ensuring each herb remains separated by parchment dividers. Then you pause to consider the next step, whether to harvest wild mulberry now under this chiaroscuro or save it for the next clearing where the moonlight is steadier. You walk forward, feet sinking into moss that feasts on the grove's moisture. The shifting light paints moving patterns that guide you, almost as if the grove itself were beckoning you toward ideal patches. Mainstream observations note that healers sometimes use shadows cast by particular trees as indicators of herb readiness. If a shadow lingered long atop a plant, it signaled peak potency. You glance at your talisman and murmur, "Let's trust the grove tonight." Circling an ancient marula tree, you find a clearing where light and shadow flicker in perfect equilibrium. Beneath its boughs, a healthy cluster of mulberry leaves awaits. You kneel and lift each leaf to the moon's edge, checking for subtle translucence. Mainstream lore credits mulberries' anti-inflammatory compounds, with peak levels when leaves bask in gentle, varied light. Fringe tales muse that singing softly under these patterns conditions the leaves to be more receptive. Though historians still argue if vocalizations influenced plant properties or were simply ritual flourishes. You snip 3 broad leaves with precision each cut, timed to coincide with a passing moonbeam. A deliberate choice that feels both playful and purposeful. You whisper, "Perfect timing, team," to your herb collection as though they're comrades on a stage. The bundle's quilt of textures, ghost roots' smooth rhizomes, sage's soft leaves, and mulberry's glossy surfaces creates a sensory tapestry you cradle against your chest. A sudden breeze stirs the canopy, shifting shadows swiftly, and you feel a thrill the grove acknowledges your rhythm. You straighten, take a deep breath of the nighttime air, and allow the hush to underscore your intent. Scholars still argue whether such environmental feedback loops were cultivated by healers or merely interpreted in hindsight. Yet tonight, you embrace the dance of light and dark as part of your craft. You gather your tools, tongs, trowel, and bowl each, now damp with moonlit dew. You tuck them back into the satchel's compartments, careful to maintain order. Each instrument has served faithfully, responding to your gentle commands. You tighten the satchel strap and lift your lantern to guide you toward the grove's deeper shadows where purification rites await. Before stepping away, you cast one last glance at the marula's ancient trunk, its bark etched with the memory of countless gatherings. You breathe in the mingled scents of sage, ghost root, and mulberry, inhaling a moment of pure reverence. This balance of light and shadow, science and superstition, feels quintessentially Zulu, a testament to healing traditions grounded in observation and spirit. You move on, lantern glinting against shifting patterns, heart aligned with the grove's whispered pulse, ready for the next ritual, blending herbs and water in the hush of the night. You step into a narrower glade where moonlight drips through lacy canopies, illuminating tufts of moss clinging to tree trunks and stones. As you move, a small flutter catches your eye, moss-hopping moths, their muted wing patterns blending seamlessly with the greenery. You grin, whispering, "Looks like I crashed their moonlit rave." Historians still argue whether these nocturnal pollinators played a deliberate role in Zulu herbal rites or were simply observed as charming companions, but tonight, their silent dance becomes part of your story. Joke one slips out. Moth DJs spinning the hottest fungal beats. You crouch low, watching one particular moth butterfly between herb blossoms and mossy patches, its proboscis grazing tiny flower cups. Mainstream fact. Many Zulu healers noted that these moths carried pollen from moon-blooming herbs, an early understanding of insect-assisted pollination long before Western botany formalized the concept. Fringe whispers suggest some healers even encouraged moth gatherings by leaving out sugary offerings, though skeptics dismiss this as folklore rather than documented practice. Historians still debate the extent to which intentional pollinator management shaped pre-colonial agriculture. You softly extend a finger and one moth flutters onto it, its velvety legs tickling your skin. The sensation is electrifying, a tiny brush of life in your hand. You inhale the sweet, earthy scent of nearby wild jasmine, one of the moth's favored blossoms, and remember the mainstream lore that jasmine's nocturnal flowers opened precisely for these pollinators, enhancing fragrance when moonlight peaked. You let the moth rest for a moment, eyes closed, attuned to its quiet presence. Joke 2 escapes. Appreciate you joining the party, buddy. No cover charge. With gentle care, you guide the moth back toward the blossoms, letting it resume its nectar hunt. As it flits away, you feel a kinship where all creatures of the night drawn to moonlit magic and herbal promises. You rise, lantern in hand, and circle a low bank of wild marjoram, a fringe herb occasionally used for soothing dreams. Mainstream texts note that Zulu healers observe certain small beetles burrow into marjoram flower heads before dawn, believing the beetle secretions enrich the plant's calming oils. You kneel beside a blossom and with your tongs coax 3 tiny beetles gently onto a leaf for observation. Their iridescent shells gleam under lamplight, and you murmur, nature's tiny alchemists at work. Scholars still debate whether these beetles actually influence oil composition, or if the healers simply noticed co-occurrence and wove it into ritual lore. Joke 3. Arrive softly. Who knew beetles were the unsung baristas of herbal tea? You carefully return each beetle to its bloom and resume your path. The glade feels alive with subtle motion, wings beating, antennae twitching, tiny creatures pursuing midnight feasts. You pause to reflect. Mainstream botanical knowledge credits these observations with inspiring early seed planting techniques linking pollination to crop fertility. Fringe stories credit healers with early ecological stewardship, though some historians argue these tales were romanticized by colonial-era ethnographers. A gentle breeze stirs the moths and beetles alike, sending tiny leaves fluttering to the ground. You watch a moth land on your lantern's glass, its delicate wings pressed close. You whisper, "Stay warm, little one," and the creature remains an instant before flying off into deeper shadows. The interplay of your lantern's glow and the moon's glow creates a dual spotlight on its flight, framing it like a silent ballet. You settle onto a mossy stump and retrieve a small drawstring pouch from your satchel. Inside lies a handful of sugarcane crystals, an offering you prepared earlier to attract pollinators. You sprinkle a few crystals onto the stump, and within moments more moths and beetles gather, drawn by the sweet lure. Mainstream accounts note that Zulu healers use such attractants to study pollinator behavior and even to encourage greater yields in home gardens, an agricultural insight well ahead of its time. Fringe lore, however, claims that these gatherings invited benevolent spirits to join healing ceremonies, their presence sanctifying the herbs with otherworldly energy. Historians still argue whether the offerings served purely scientific or spiritual aims. You close your eyes, inhaling the mingled scents of sugarcane, jasmine, and moss. The soft rustle of wings and the faint hum of insect wings create an ambient soundtrack that soothes your mind. You smile, feeling a comforting connection to every healer before you who pause to marvel at these small wonders. The grove's nocturnal orchestra plays on each tiny creature, a note in an ancient composition. Rising, you shake the remaining crystals into the earth, ensuring none of the insects starve on your account. You gather your pouch and tuck it back into the satchel, lantern held high to guide you toward the next clearing. Each step lifts you higher on a small rise, and the grove's expanse unfolds around you, silent, alive, brimming with moonlit secrets. As you walk, you reflect on the lesson. Healing traditions didn't just rely on plants but embraced the entire nocturnal ecosystem. Mainstream botanists now recognize that these early observations contributed to foundational knowledge of pollination and plant reproduction. Fringe scholars whisper that healers use these small insect gatherings as divinatory tools, interpreting patterns of movement as signs of upcoming weather or community fortunes, though concrete evidence remains elusive. Historians still debate these interpretations, but for you the presence of moths and beetles is both practical and profoundly poetic. Ahead lies a small clearing where water collects in a depression. Next, you'll perform the purification water rinse. But for this moment, you stand amid moths and beetles. Lanterns glow, painting them gold against the silver night. Their tiny wings beat a gentle lullaby, coaxing your mind into deeper calm. You breathe slowly, each exhale, releasing the day's worries, each inhale connecting you to the grove's living pulse. You lower your lantern and step gently toward the clearing's edge, leaving the moths to their dance. You've honored their place in the ritual, woven their stories into your own. Ahead, the purification ritual beckons a final step before your precious herbs receive their blessing. You pause beside a weathered baobab stump lantern, held low, as you consult the carved lunar talisman dangling from your satchel strap. It bears notches for each moon phase, and tonight it indicates you're in the waning gibbous, an ideal time to maximize herb potency without overstressing the plants. Historians still argue whether Zulu healers tracked moon phases with such precision or simply followed memory and pattern, but your talisman's quiet tick offers reassuring certainty. Joke 1 floats out. It's like checking your favorite app but with fewer cat videos and more cosmic vibes. You tap the talisman's notches and murmur the corresponding mantra fragment, feeling the groove worn into the wood guide your touch. Mainstream lore tells you that herbs gathered on the waning moon were believed to have stronger drying and preserving qualities perfect for long-term storage. You glance at the sky, the moon's curve looks more modest tonight, as if winking in approval. A breeze stirs, and you spot low-growing moonflower vines curling around the roots. Their pale blossoms unfurl only at night, exhaling a vanilla-sweet perfume. You crouch, inhaling deeply. Fringe whispers among some elder circles claim that if you harvest moonflowers exactly 12 hours after peak bloom, you capture a rare sedative compound, though modern phytochemists still debate whether these timing nuances affect alkaloid concentrations. Historians still argue whether such fringe timings evolved from empirical testing or ceremonial tradition. Joke 2 escapes. I always knew flowers had a better nightlife than I do. You gently pinch 3 open blooms at their base, careful not to disturb unopened buds. A practice mainstream records note helped ensure ongoing plant reproduction. You place the moonflowers in a separate cloth wrap, the petals slipping softly between fabric folds. You stand and step back, holding the blossoms up to the moonlight. Their translucent petals glow like night lanterns, and you feel a gentle buzz of satisfaction. Mainstream fact: moonflower seeds, when ground and mixed with ghost root, created dream-inducing poultices used by Zulu midwives to ease labor pains. You tuck that thought away for when you combine herbs later. Now for a quirky detour. Some fringe lore suggests that if you hum a lullaby in the moonflower patch, the petals emit tiny luminescent spores, though skeptics argue this is mere bioluminescent wishful thinking. Scholars still argue whether oral traditions of humming were mnemonic cues or actual sonic enhancements to herbal properties, but tonight you hum a soft tune, lullaby of the baobab, your own improvised lull. Joke 3 drifts under your breath. If humming helped, I'd be the world's worst pop singer. You snip the final bloom and secure the wrap, inhaling its calming scent before stashing it in your satchel beside sage, ghost root, and mulberry. The growing bundle feels like a miniature moonlit cosmos cradled against your side. You glance up to ensure the moon still shines through a thinning veil of clouds. It does steady, serene, a silent partner in your nocturnal work. Mainstream manuals note that Zulu healers often aligned harvests to the third night past full moon for maximum alkaloid yield. Your talisman confirms you're on schedule. Fringe anecdote: some elder voices claim herbs cut on the exact minute that moonlight first touches eastern hills. Grant prophetic dreams. Though historians still debate whether such precision was ever practiced or simply poetic license, you press a fingertip to your wrist, noting the pulse of your own blood. It's steady, an ideal gauge that you haven't overexerted yourself. The grove around you breathes two soft whispers of leaves, distant frog calls echoing off rocks, and your own quiet heartbeat. You feel an intimate connection to both the lunar rhythms and the plants yielding under their gaze. Tucking the moonflower bundle into your satchel's dedicated patch, you ensure each herb remains separate, preserving its unique fragrance. You glance at your tools: tongs, damp trowel, damp clay bowl, empty now awaiting infusion. You'd usually perform the purification rinse next, but the moon phase wisdom urges one more step. A quick chant to seal intentions, only a line or two used sparingly. You close your eyes and speak softly. By moon's waning light, preserve and calm. The words drift off on the night breeze, seeming to settle into bark crevices and shimmering leaves. Whether they alter chemistry or simply align your focus, you accept the ritual's power wholeheartedly. Drawing a deep breath, you feel gratitude for the moon's gentle guidance. You pat the talisman once more, secure it back in your satchel, and let your gaze wander to the grove's far edge. There, the purification water rinse awaits cool creek water and fine ash poised to blend science and spirit in equal measure. You lift your lantern and step toward the creek's reflection, ready to merge water with ash, completing a ritual as old as moon cycles themselves. You step down a gentle slope toward a quiet creek, where moonlight shimmers on rippling water, its cool surface beckoning like a silvery mirror. Lantern in one hand, satchel in the other, you pause at the bank's edge, inhaling the crisp aroma of damp earth and fresh water. Historians still argue whether Zulu healers prized specific springs for their mineral content or simply used the most accessible water, but tonight you treat this creek as both a practical resource and a sacred element. Joke one whispers as you kneel. Always wanted to make a splash in herbal healing. Guess tonight's my chance. You scoop a ladle of water into your gourd, watching droplets catch the lantern's glow. Mainstream lore records that Zulu healers believed creek water carried cleansing properties. Washing herbs in running water removed impurities and symbolically purified intentions. You set the gourd down and dip two-fingered into the cool, liquid-flicking droplets onto your wrists in a miniature blessing. Reaching into your satchel, you pull a small pouch of fine ash gathered from your ritual fire. Fringe whispers suggest that mixing ash from specific hardwoods like pundu or msasa imbued water with additional antiseptic power. Though chemists still debate whether ash contributes measurable antibacterial effects. Historians still argue whether ash additions stemmed from empirical observation or ritual symbolism, but you're keen to try both practicality and tradition. Joke 2 emerges softly. Adding ash because why waste a good bonfire? You sprinkle a pinch into the gourd, stirring with a slender reed until the water swirls pale gray. The mixture emits faint, earthy steam in the cool night air, promising purification on multiple levels. You murmur, "Didn't know I'd be mixing cocktails tonight," and grin at your own wit. You lean closer and submerge your bundled herbs, ghost root, sage, mulberry, and moonflower in the ash water bath. The herbs bob gently, releasing tiny bubbles as air trapped in crevices escapes. Mainstream herbal compendiums note that this rinse not only cleansed debris but also prepared plant tissues to better absorb drying temperatures. Fringe lore claims the ash water activates latent compounds, though botanists still debate whether any chemical activation truly occurs. Scholars still argue whether the ritual's main value lay in hygiene or in reinforcing the healer's intent. Joke 3 surfaces. Herbal hot tub minus the heat. You let the bundles steep for a moment, closing your eyes and listening to the creek's soft murmur blending with your breathing. You imagine ancestors kneeling here under similar moonlight hands immersed in water hearts tuned to the same rhythms. Raising one bundle at a time, you gently pat the herbs dry with clean cloth woven for exactly this purpose. The cloth soaks up water without crushing delicate leaves or bruising roots. Mainstream records describe Zulu drying cloths treated with thin layers of ground clay to wick moisture, a technique still echoed in modern plant processing methods. You press each herb against the fabric, then lay them on flat stone slabs warmed by the fire's lingering heat, ensuring air circulates around each stem and leaf. You pause to observe. Ghost root's pale rhizomes gleam. Slightly brighter, sage's silver hairs stand on end. Mulberry leaves curve softly, and moonflower petals hold their luminous glow. The purification rinse seems to have enlivened each herb's character. Fringe tales tell of herbs bursting with renewed vitality after a proper ash water ceremony, though skeptics insist any change is purely psychological. Historians still debate the interplay between physical cleansing and mental conviction in these rites. You gather the empty ash water gourd and rinse it in the creek, ensuring no residue remains for future tasks. You pat the gourd dry with fresh cloth, remarking quietly, "Even my tools need a spa day." The lantern's light catches the creek's flow, creating dancing patterns on a nearby stones that seem almost playful. A reminder that nature participates in every step. Standing, you brush your knees free of damp soil and step back toward the fire circle where your drying herbs await. The path glimmers under moonlight, mottled by shadows of overhanging branches. In the distance, the fire's warm glow beckons a counterpoint to the creek's cool shimmer. You adjust your satchel strap and secure the talisman against your chest, feeling its reassuring weight. A mainstream footnote flits through your mind. Zulu healers often documented herb prints, and herb preparations on bark strips bound to their satchels, a precursor to apothecary labeling. Your parchment labels flutter in a gentle breeze, each one inscribed with essential details: harvest date, moon phase, and intended use. Fringe whispers claim that mislabeling would anger plant spirits, leading to weakened remedies. Though historians still debate whether such beliefs governed practical labeling or served as mnemonic reminders. You approach the fire circle and lay out each herb on its designated stone slab, spacing them so they dry evenly. The firelight warms the slabs, drawing out residual moisture. You step back, admiring the orderly arrangement. Ghost root's twisted warmth, sage's silvery shimmer, mulberry's gentle green, and moonflower's pale glow. They look like a tiny garden of moonlight itself. You lower your lantern beside the fire, leaning on one knee as you review your work. The purification rinse complete. The herbs stand ready for final binding. You take a deep breath, the combined scents enveloping you in a heady bouquet. Earth ash, moonlit florals, and healing promise. As you rise, you recall that only 2 sections remain before the final blessing. Historians still argue whether the concluding rituals centered on binding or on dream-inducing infusions. But your outline demands binding next, and subtly an invitation to restless minds to drift towards sleep. You pat your satchel, satisfyingly heavy now, and whisper, "Almost home, team." With a final glance at the creek's silver reflection and the fire's golden glow, you lift your lantern and step away, poised to return deeper into the grove for herb bundle binding. You tread softly through a corridor of ferns and low-hanging moss, lantern held just high enough to reveal your path without startling the grove's inhabitants. The night feels expectant, as if the very air waits for the next performance. Ahead, your ears catch a distant chorus of guttural laughs, the unmistakable calls of hyenas echoing through moonlit valleys. Historians still argue whether Zulu healers deliberately chose sites frequented by hyenas for their reputed protective spirits, or simply regarded them as natural keepers of carrion. But tonight, you'll test your nerves against their watchful presence. Joke 1 drifts from your lips in a hushed tone, hyenas. Nature's stand-up comedians with a taste for midnight snacks. You pause listening to the layered cackles, some short and abrupt, others long and trailing off into silence. The sounds ripple through the trees, bouncing off trunks like phantom dialogues. Mainstream lore records that healers interpreted hyena calls as messages, warnings of approaching storms or signs of omens, so you press your ear to the breeze trying to parse meaning from madness. Your lantern's glow reveals tufts of tall grass swaying in the darkness, and you recall a fringe whisper. Some healer lineages believed hyenas had an uncanny sixth sense for detecting poisonous herbs, their laughter intensifying when danger lurked. Skeptics dismiss this as fanciful, but scholars still debate whether such animal behavior was observed and incorporated into ritual knowledge or retrofitted into lore by later storytellers. You take a deep breath, reminding yourself that these same groves yielded life-saving medicines, the night's duality at its finest. Joke 2 surfaces softly. Can't blame them. After pulling a late-night herb harvest, I'd be laughing too. You edge forward, lantern casting elongated shadows that dance like mischievous sprites. The hyena's calls grow closer, and you glimpse a pair of eyes glinting among the underbrush, bright beads, hovering just beyond the rim of your lantern's reach. You hold your ground, heart steady, refusing to step back. You reach into your satchel and finger the smooth wooden talisman, its cool surface grounding you. Mainstream fact healers often carried such talismans to bolster courage and ward off trepidation. Some believe the talisman's presence turned the hyena's attention away from the healer's person and toward the ritual fire instead. You murmur the talisman's mantra fragment under your breath. Feeling. The ancestral words resonate through your chest. As if on cue, the hyena pair emerges into the lantern's circle, lean silhouettes with shaggy backs and sloping haunches. They pause, heads tilted, studying you with inscrutable intelligence. Their eyes reflect lamplight, revealing pale irises framed by dark fur. You remain still, recalling a mainstream note that Zulu healers respected hyenas' sharp eyesight and sometimes observed their night vision techniques to guide harvesting in low-light conditions. Joke 3 sneaks out in a whisper. You two should try YouTube. Those reactions are priceless. One hyena's jaw opens in a slow pant, and you swear you hear a low chuckle ripple from its throat. Fringe lore holds that hyenas laughed when recognizing human presence, but modern ethologists explain the sound as a form of nervous communication rather than humor. Historians still argue whether healers anthropomorphize these sounds as spiritual messages or observed practical behavior cues. Either way, the calls guide your senses. You crouch and offer a respectful nod. No sudden movements, only a calm acknowledgement. Gradually, the hyenas retreat into the shadows, their laughter fading like a receding tide. You exhale, the tension melting from your shoulders. The grove stands quiet again, save for the distant chorus of frogs and the rustle of leaves. Standing upright, you scan the area for your next target. The herb bundle binding site, marked by a cluster of upright wooden stakes carved with protective sigils. Mainstream records note that binding often took place at the grove's edge, where the thinned canopy allowed first rays of dawn to touch the preparations at the perfect moment. You spot the stakes ahead, their shapes outlined by moonlight filtering through sparse branches. You advance, lantern bobbing lightly, and kneel before the stakes. The ground here is firm yet soft enough for carving. You draw from your satchel a length of untreated sinew, strong yet flexible, and lay it across the stakes. Fringe accounts claim that certain healer families used braided sinew left overnight under hyena watch to gain additional protective power, though scholars still debate whether this practice had real efficacy or served as a mnemonic for braid patterns. Historians still argue the origins of such hyena-linked binding techniques, but the sinew in your hand is real and your intention is clear. You position your harvested herbs, ghost root, silverleaf, sage, mulberry leaves, and moonflower blossoms in a neat row before the stakes. You inspect each bundle, pressing gently to compact leaves and roots without bruising. Mainstream herbal guides emphasize the importance of even pressure during binding to ensure proper drying airflow and prevent mold. You nod satisfied with your work. Picking up the sinew, you wrap it around the first bundle in 3 deliberate loops, tying a secure knot. With each loop, you whisper a protective phrase, by earth, by moon, by spirit's breath. The words form a bridge between your modern mind and age-old tradition. You repeat for each bundle, wrapping and knotting with steady precision. Joke 4 surfaces, 6 herbs in total. One extra joke won't hurt. Binding herbs, binding memories, hopefully not binding me to stay up all night. You smile at your own levity as you complete the final knot. With binding complete, you hang each bundle from its designated stake, ensuring none touch the damp ground. The stakes cradle the herbs like silent guardians, the sinew knots catching flickers of lantern and moonlight. Mainstream accounts describe how the suspended bundles dried evenly, preserving oils and aromas, while fringe traditions held that the knives carving marks on the stakes attracted ancestral spirits to oversee the drying process. Historians still debate whether such carvings were purely decorative or served sacred functions, but tonight the stakes gleam with both craftsmanship and purpose. You step back and admire the orderly display. Ghost roots, pale rhizomes, silverleaf sages, ghostly foliage, mulberries, deep green leaves, and moonflowers' luminous blooms, each bound and dangling in the hush of the grove. A final sense of completion settles in your chest, a quiet pride in your careful work and playful perseverance amid hyena laughter. You lift your lantern one last time, casting a warm glow across the gathering. The stakes stand sentinel, the herbs ready for dawn's gentle touch. The hyena's calls have faded into distant memory, replaced by a serene hush that invites reflection and rest. You pat your satchel, now lighter but full of purpose, and turn away from the boundary stakes, prepared for the final blessing awaiting in the heart of the grove. You draw a slow breath, feeling the soft cadence of the night lull you onward. The last sections promise closure and calm, a wind down that honors both tradition and sleep's embrace. You tread a familiar path back through the grove as dawn's first pale fingers begin to brush the eastern sky. Your lantern, now unneeded but still tucked in your hand for tradition's sake. You probably won't survive the sprawls of sleepiness without one last pun. So here it is. Guess it's time to leave this night behind. But before your eyelids droop, you press onward toward the ridge where fresh dawn awaits. Mainstream lore notes that Zulu healers often timed their return when birdsong peaked, believed to signal the earth's renewal and herb potency locking in, so you pause to listen. A chorus of mourning doves and weaver birds fills the air, their gentle coos and chirps, combining into a soft symphony that ushers you forward. Historians still argue whether such avian cues were practical markers or later ritual embellishments, but you accept the dawn chorus as your guide. You step onto the ridge overlooking the grove now, a mosaic of shadows and early light. The hanging bundles sway gently on their stake silhouettes dark against pastel skies. You grin softly. Joke 2. Nothing like fresh morning air to wake up your herbal senses. The breeze carries cool dew that brushes your skin, and you inhale deeply, tasting hints of ghost roots' earthy sweetness and moonflower's vanilla trace. Ahead, the valley floor glows in subtle gradients, inky hollows, shifting to muted lavender, then to pale gold where the sun will soon break fully. You recall a fringe whisper. Some healer families believe that standing at dawn's edge while herbs still hung helped infuse the morning mist with healing essences, making early risers feel calmer throughout the day. Scholars still debate whether this was practical or simply poetic flair. Joke 3 drifts under your breath. Dawn's edge because morning metaphor was already taken. You kneel by the first stake, touching the sinew knot binding the ghost root bundle. The roots look sturdier in daylight, plump with dew and promise. You collect the bundle, inhaling its combined fragrance, cool, clean, and oddly energizing. Mainstream herbal compendiums confirm that ghost root's sedative properties peak when dried at low dawn temperatures, preserving volatile compounds. You move to the silver leaf sage, its silvery hairs now glistening like frost. You untie the sinew with careful precision, and each sprig falls into your palm, releasing a whisper of antiseptic aroma. A fringe anecdote suggests that if you whisper a morning greeting to the sage before untethering it, its oils stay fresher longer. Though historians still argue whether such botanical pleasantries truly matter or merely reinforced healer respect for plants. Pausing. You glance at the sky hues of apricot and rose trace cloud edges. You tuck the sage into a separate cloth wrap, mindful of cross-scenting, and head to the next stake. The mulberry leaves flutter as you approach their deep green, now vibrant in dawn light. You untie and lift them gently, noting the smooth veins and glossy surface. Mainstream texts emphasize that mulberry's anti-inflammatory leaf compounds withstand dawn's chill better than midday heat, making your timing spot on. You tuck the mulberry into your bundle, then reach for the moonflower blossoms. Their pale petals sag slightly under dew's weight, petals soft as silk. You cradle each bloom, inhaling the sweet perfume that now feels more floral than ghostly. Fringe lore holds that moonflowers collected at first light repel nightmares when steeped in tea, though skeptics dismiss it as bedtime comic relief. Historians still debate whether such claims derive from genuine experiences or bedtime storytelling. You stand satchel full but light in spirit and survey the grove one last time. The stakes stand empty, sentinels, relieved of their burden, and you whisper a final nod of gratitude. Mainstream records note, healers often sprinkled a bit of ground ash at each stake's base post-harvest, a closing ritual symbolizing transformation, but you skip it. Your ash used and spirits pleased. A gentle rustle draws your gaze to a small bush of wild aloe nearby, its spiky leaves glowing in the dawn. Though not on tonight's list, you can't resist a fringe impulse slip, a single aloe gel sachet into your pocket as a treat for tomorrow's minor burns or dry skin. Scholars still argue whether spontaneous additions counted as ritual breaches or simply adaptive healer improvisations. You descend the ridge's grassy incline satchel, secured boots brushing dew-wet blades. The path runs alongside the creek where you rinsed and dried herbs just hours ago. Now the water glints like melted silver under awakening skies. You pause to fill your gourd once more, cool creek water for the journey home, and perhaps a sip of fresh clarity. Joke 4 sneaks in hydration because even healers can't self-medicate a dry throat. You sip slowly, relishing the crisp flavor that feels as pure as sunrise itself. The grove behind you shrinks to a silhouette as you follow the trail toward home. You think of your grandmother's hut near the valley's edge where clay pots await your careful pour of herbs for infusion ointment or soothing tea. Mainstream practice guided healers to begin preparations at dawn, believing that solar energy at this hour activated herbs most gently. You smile, proud that your timing syncs with centuries of wisdom. Historians still argue whether pre-colonial healers recorded exact times like modern schedules or simply operated on natural rhythms, but considering your talisman and notes, you've blended tradition with precision. As the sky brightens to pale peach, you feel a warm satisfaction. A night's work complete from moonrise to dawn's edge, every plant honored, every ritual observed, every joke quietly told. You reach the hut's welcoming silhouette against the sky, its thatched roof ablaze in golden light. You pause at the threshold, satchel in hand, and exhale a full-body release of tension, respect, and that reflective sarcasm that kept you company. The journey ends here, but the healing stories are only beginning to unfold in sunlit brews and whispered remedies. You step inside, welcomed by soft morning chatter and the smell of cooking porridge. Your herbs rest across the table, ready for their next chapter in easing aches, calming minds, and whispering tales of moonlit lore. You slip out of the hut before sunrise, satchel slung over your shoulder as the sky shifts from deep indigo to lavender streaks that bleed across the horizon. Your footsteps fall softly on dew-slick grass, each blade bending beneath your boots and releasing a cool, soothing mist. You retrace your path back to the ridge where last night you first glimpsed the moonlit grove clutching your bounty of herbs. And a mischievous thought about Zulu midwives using moonlight to ease labor pains. Talk about a delivery under special lighting. Joke one drifts from your lips. As you pause at a fork in the trail, midwives had glow-in-the-dark shifts. No extra charge. You grin at the playful image of lantern-wielding midwives hustling between huts. Historians still argue whether midwives truly timed births to moon phases for ease, or if such tales were later embellishments. But mainstream records confirm many healers believed moonlight possessed gentle, analgesic qualities that soothed laboring mothers. Ahead, the valley unfolds in muted pastels, pale pinks, and soft grays melding where night surrenders to dawn. You recall a callback to Section 1's ancestral fire. Tiny embers still glow in your memory, guiding you now by their echo of warmth. As you climb the gentle slope ferns, you brushed aside last night glisten with dew, their slender fronds curving like nature's brushes painting liquid silver. You steady your breath and check your satchel's contents. Ghost root. Rhizomes pulse with earthy promise. Silverleaf sage emits a faint antiseptic tang. Mulberry leaves whisper of gentle cool. Moonflower petals carry their vanilla-sweet hush. A quirky tidbit surfaces: some healer families believed midwives brewed a special moonflower and ghost root infusion to hasten dilation. Though scholars still debate whether these concoctions were practical or part of a comforting placebo ritual in labor huts. Joke 2 escapes. Imagine sipping night tea to speed up contractions, herbal power, or nerves of steel. You tug your cloak tighter against the pre-dawn chill and continue upward, each step light yet purposeful. Mainstream herbal texts note that ghost root's antipyretic compounds also possessed mild uterine relaxing properties, which may explain midwives' interest in the root. A fact that bridges medicine and midwifery in surprising ways. At the ridge crest, you pause to survey the nest of hills and valleys below. The empty stakes of your binding site appear as tiny sentinels in the soft light, their silhouettes etched against pastel skies. You can almost hear the faint hum of the grove's night symphony moth wings. Hyena echoes water's hush, still playing in your mind. A gentle breeze carries a faint jasmine note, prompting a memory of the moth party in Section 7. You inhale, letting the scent ground you before the final stretch home. Joke 3 comes as you descend the ridge. Early bird catches the worm, or in this case, the herbs. You step carefully over exposed roots, mindful of shifting shadows that might still conceal hidden obstacles. Historians still argue whether early morning collection improved herb potency or simply provided cooler conditions for transport, but mainstream practice among Zulu healers often paired moonlit harvests with immediate dawn returns to harness both lunar and solar energies in tandem. The path winds alongside the creek where you performed your purification rinse in Section 9. The water now mirrors the light sky, glowing faintly like molten silver. You pause at a shallow bend and scoop a handful of water, splashing your face to awaken every sense. The cold spark against your skin is bracing, a crisp reminder that day follows night in an unbroken cycle. Fringe lore insists that midwives sometimes drenched linens in creek water to wrap newborns, believing the combined coolness and lunar potency eased the infant's entry into the world, though scholars debate whether this was widespread or confined to a few lineages. Joke 4 surfaces under your breath. Newborn spa treatments. Zulu style. You chuckle softly and continue along the bank boots, leaving faint prints that will soon wash away with the next tide of mist. Wild aloe you pocketed in section 11 peeks from your cloak pocket. Its gel sachet a small promise of future relief for cracked lips and minor burns, practical but hardly essential for your journey home. As you approach the grove's edge, familiar totems carved with spirit sigils come into view, their shapes softened by early light. You touch one carved post, tracing its weathered grooves. Mainstream accounts indicate these totems served both navigational and protective functions, marking safe passage for returning healers. You offer a silent thanks to the ancestors, your fingers brushing carved figures that once guided countless others. Joke 5 drifts out. Silent guideposts. Nature's GPS, no signal required. You step past the totems into a narrow corridor of shrubs, each leaf still beaded with dew. The last stretch feels like a corridor between two worlds, night's hush behind you, day's bustle just ahead. You lean into the corridor's cool embrace, savoring the hush before familiar sounds reach your ears. At the grove's mouth, you look back to see the canopy's final arch fallen dim in dawn's palette. A single moonflower petal lies on the path, ghost white against the brown earth. You kneel and pick it up, placing it carefully atop your satchel as a keepsake, a tangible reminder of the night's enchantment. Historians still argue whether healers collected such tokens deliberately or if these acts were improvisations born of sentimental attachment, but the act feels right. Joke 6 surfaces souvenir hunting. Zulu style, no postcards. You rise, brushing dirt from your knees, and step onto the open field beyond the grove. Here, morning light spreads, fully bathing grassy slopes in gentle warmth. A rooster's distant crow greets you, a mainstream symbol of daybreak that countless cultures share, linking sky and earth with a simple call. You inhale deeply, tasting the mingled scents of fresh grass, creek water, and your preserved herbs. The journey feels complete. Moonlit. Foraging, ancestral invocations, insect dances, hyena. Encounters, purification rites. Binding, and now dawn's return. You adjust your satchel strap and straighten your shoulders, a contented weight, anchoring you to both earth and tradition. As you near the hut once more, voices drift on the morning breeze, neighbors greeting the day, children playing drums, echoing a new sun's welcome. You step onto worn flagstones at the doorway, satchel heavy with potential cures and stories waiting to be shared. You give a final nod to the horizon where lavender becomes rose, and you smile. Joke 7. All in a night's work, literally. You step inside, greeting familiar faces, ready to reveal the moonlit treasures you gathered. Your journey under pre-dawn lavender skies has come full circle, blending plant spirit and story into a single herb-laden embrace. You place your satchel down, herbs neatly arranged, petal keepsake resting on top. Tomorrow, these ingredients will transform into teas, poultices, and dream balms, and tonight's story will settle into memory, ready to guide the next seeker at dusk. You step into the warm glow of dawn, filtering through the hut's woven reed walls, lantern long extinguished as you approach the wide wooden rack draped with linen mats, your humble herb drying loft. You set your satchel down with a soft thud, each bundle of ghost root, sage, mulberry, and moonflower unraveling under curious eyes. Historians still argue whether traditional Zulu drying lofts were rooftop platforms or simple racks at ground level, but your setup, a raised frame to catch breezes, feels practical and time-honored. Joke 1 drifts from your lips. Who knew I'd become a medieval herb influencer? You smile at the mental image of tiny ghosts of healers, nodding in approval. You lift the ghost root rhizome bundle first, its slender tendrils still clutching faint droplets of dew. Mainstream lore tells you that drying rhizomes in gentle air at ambient morning temperatures preserved volatile alkaloids essential for fever remedies. You untie the sinew, letting the roots cascade onto the mat, their pale surfaces gleaming in the soft light. You arrange each rhizome with deliberate spacing, no two touching to ensure even airflow. Fringe whispers among apothecary descendants claim that adding sprigs of lavender beneath root bundles speeds drying and imparts subtle aromatic notes, though chemists still debate whether co-drying cross-pollinates essential oils. Historians still argue whether such lavender tricks originated with Zulu healers or arrived via European traders, but you slip a few lavender buds beneath the ghost root anyway, just in case. Joke 2. Surfaces quietly. Lavender because ghost root deserves a spa upgrade. You tie a small parchment label beside the rhizome's ghost root. Harvest 18th Century. Zulu Grove waning gibbous. Labels like these echo colonial-era apothecary precision, yet they satisfy your modern penchant for organization. Next, you lift the silver leaf sage bundles. The leaves' velvety surface still bristles softly under your fingertips. Mainstream herbalists note that sage leaves dry best when laid flat with leaf surface exposed to rising sunbeams filtered through protective cloth, avoiding scorching yet inviting warmth. You position each sprig stem first toward the sunlit side of the rack, fanning the leaves gently. Fringe lore murmurs that rotating the bundles every hour ensures even drying, though historians still debate whether healers tracked time so meticulously. You rotate them once and set a loose twig as a rustic timer in case you drift off to midday chores. Joke 3. Arrives. Nothing says pro like a twig timer. You tie the parchment label to the rack's top beam. Silverleaf sage 3 sprigs lunar harvest. The label flaps with each breeze, a tiny herald for passing breezes to carry the herb's scent beyond the hut. Turning to the mulberry leaves, you note their glossy green, now muted by early drying. Mainstream records describe placing mulberry leaves on slightly elevated slats to prevent moisture pooling underneath, which causes mold. You secure each leaf individually between thin sticks, creating miniature sandwich frames that let air circulate both above and below. Fringe apothecaries whispered of using termite-resistant wood for these frames to guard against tiny nibblers, though skeptics insist proper herb storage wards off pests without such superstitions. You choose termite-resistant M. pundu wood for your sandwich frames, just one more nod to ancestral wisdom. Joke 4 drifts under your breath. Sandwich frames, the gourmet panini presses of the herb world. You affix the label. Mulberry leaves fever. Tea late harvest. Finally, the moonflower blossoms rest in a shallow woven basket lined with dried grass. Mainstream compendiums recommend minimal stacking of blossoms, one layer only to guard against petal crushing. You slide each bloom into its cushioned nest, careful to preserve the delicate petal's structure. Fringe lore suggests placing a dried petal from the previous harvest beneath each blossom to guide the drying petals toward optimal scent retention, though historians still debate the practice's origins. You slip a single archival petal beneath the basket's grass lining, honoring the suggestion. Joke 5 surfaces softly. Moonflower futon, now with heritage pillow. You label the basket Moonflower. Blossoms, Dream Tea Peak scent. Stepping back, you survey your drying arrays, ghost root rhizomes on their airy mat. Sage sprigs fanned for gentle warmth. Mulberry leaves cradled in sandwich frames. Moonflower petals nestled in grass-lined baskets. The combined waft of earthy root, antiseptic sage-sweet mulberry, and dreamy moonflower fills the hut with a calming symphony. You close your eyes, inhaling deeply, the proof that preparation meets intention in every plated bone and carved ridge of this humble drying loft. You wipe a bead of sweat from your brow, the morning's work only halfway done. Labels and place bundles arrayed, you feel a flicker of pride. Mainstream herbalists still recommend checking drying progress twice daily to prevent overdrying or mildew. Fringe apothecaries remind healers to never skip a midday breeze pat lest the herbs sulk. Historians still argue whether midday checks were scheduled tasks or casual inspections, but you promise yourself 2 breeze pats, one now and one before sunset to honor every tradition. You gather the empty parchment scraps and tie them into a tidy archive for future reference, a makeshift ledger of tonight's lunar harvest. Joke 6 escapes. Archival scrap collection. Future historians, you're welcome. You store the ledger beside your talisman and clap your hands once, a quiet signal that drying rituals are complete. Stepping away from the drying loft, you feel the herbs settling into their new form, roots and leaves, transitioning from living greenness to preserved remedy. The drying loft stands like a gallery, each herb a work of art caught between moonlit harvest and sunlit cure. You pat the rack's sturdy beam and whisper, "Sleep tight, team, see you in teas." You exit the hut into full daylight, heart light despite the hours of work ahead. The grove slept, the grove rests, and now so do you until the infusions under candlelight beckon to night's next act. You enter the dimly lit space behind the drying loft, an alcove lined with earthen shelves cradling ceramic pots, mortar and pestle sets, and rows of labeled flasks. The midday sun filters through narrow slits, casting golden shafts across myrrh-scented smoke, lingering faintly from morning incense. You probably won't survive this without a pun, so here goes. Welcome to the Apothecary's VIP lounge, no velvet ropes needed. The alcove feels sacred, where raw harvest becomes medicine under your hands. Mainstream lore notes that Zulu healers transition from drying to infusion stations at midday, believing that daylight energy balanced moon-harvested potency. You set your satchel on a low stool and begin unpacking. Ghost root rhizomes gleam pale against dark wood. Silverleaf sage bundles still bristling softly. Mulberry leaf frames and moonflower baskets each hold their captive treasures. You take a deep breath, inhaling the mingled scents of earth herb and lingering incense, a bouquet that tethers you between night's magic and day's promise. Joke 1 drifts as you gather your mortar. Time to crush, sip, and hopefully avoid a crushing disappointment. You place a rhizome in the bowl, its smooth surface cold under your pestle. Mainstream herbal guides record that crushing ghost root releases its cooling alkaloids most effectively when working in direct sunlight, the heat-catalyzing compound release. You press down firmly, turning root to coarse fragments, mindful not to over-pulverize into dust that herbs call gravel, a texture too fine for proper decoctions. Joke 2 surfaces. As particles scatter ghost root confetti party in a bowl, you savor the mental image before moving on. Once the ghost root is coarsely ground, you transfer it to a small pot of warm creek water, stirring slowly. You recall Section 9's purification rinse. These are the same roots cleansed of earth and infused with ashes, symbolic power. Mainstream practices recommend starting with low heat for ghost root, preventing bitter compounds from scorching, so you cradle the pot over a gentle flame, watching steam curl like wisps of memory. You turn to silverleaf sage next, untying the bundle and sprinkling leaves into another pot. The perfect ratio: 3 sprigs. For a standard teacup, honors ancestral measurements codified by healers' wives. Fringe tales suggest that adding the first leaf with your left hand channels lunar energy into the infusion, though scholars still debate whether hand choice mattered or simply provided ritual structure. You place the pot beside ghost root, careful to avoid cross-steaming scents. Joke 3 emerges quietly. Two pots walk into a bar. One says, "I'm steeped in tradition." The other, "I'm just here for the heat." You smile at the absurdity. Next, mulberry leaves go into a third vessel lined with woven grass to filter fine particles. You tie the grass ends around the pot's rim. Mainstream lore credits such grass filters with preserving leaf integrity while ensuring clarity in the resulting decoction. You pour boiling water from a gourd kettle, the liquid hissing against leaves and grass, an audible exhale marking the tea's birth. Moonflowers deserve a gentler approach. You pluck petals one by one, each as delicate as a whisper, and place them in a shallow bowl. Mainstream compendiums suggest steeping petals in barely warm water for dream balms, preserving fragile aromatic esters. You drizzle lukewarm water, not so cold that oils remain locked inside, not so hot that petals brown over each petal, watching them unfurl like tiny lanterns. Fringe apothecaries recommend adding a pinch of fine honey to petal infusions, invoking honey's antiviral qualities, though historians still debate whether original Zulu formulas included sweeteners. You resist tempting speculation and instead note the option for later. Joke 4 slips in softly. Petal therapy, gentle floral, and 0 calories. You cover the bowl with a woven lid and step back, surveying your 4 infusions: ghost root glowing pale amber, sage swirling, silver green mulberry deep russet, and moonflower milky white. Each pot exudes a distinct aroma: cooling, earth-sharp antiseptic, sweet vegetation, and soft vanilla lily. The sensory garden before you feels alive. You arrange the pots on a carved wooden plank across a low table, placing small clay cups beside each. Mainstream healers divided cups for individual doses. 3 cupfuls per remedy, served at different day moments: morning, midday, and evening. You label the cups with stick figures denoting times: sun, rising sun, at peak, and moon overhead. Fringe anecdotes say the figures doubled as mnemonic devices for illiterate patients, though scholars still argue whether pictographs predated bark strip records. Joke 5 surfaces, stick figures, when words just won't cut it. You pour a spoonful of ghost root decoction into its cup, the liquid shimmering. You swipe a bit across your wrist and taste a cool hint, proof of efficacy. You sip a cautious mouthful, the chilly warmth spreading like a whispered promise against fever's advance. You nod satisfied before moving to sage. A quiet sip delivers a brisk antiseptic bite that clears your sinuses, useful when summer winds stir airborne irritants. Mulberry infusion tastes of autumn leaves and sun-warmed fields, sweet with gentle bitterness. You pause, appreciating the balance, and imagine its soothing effect on aching joints. Finally, moonflower petal in infusion. A soft, dreamy sip that coats your tongue in silky calm, a perfect prelude to midday rest. A fringe recommendation beneath your breath. Add honey later, just a drop. You gather the cups and place them before waiting. Apprentices, family members, or village youth learning the craft. You instruct them gently on dosing 1 cup before work, 1 at lunch, 1 as dusk falls. Mainstream training emphasized apprenticeships, oral tradition stories, and jokes woven into lessons to make them memorable. You smile and deliver a quick pun as teaching aid. Remember, when it comes to dosing, measure thrice, brew once. The apprentices laugh quietly, their smiles brightening the alcove. You feel a swell of pride. The night's meticulous gathering now fuels community healing. You lean back, inhaling the blended aromas one last time, the culmination of ritual science and playful reflection. Soon the midday sun will climb higher, chores will resume, and the grove's nocturnal world will rest until the next moonrise. You rise, tuck your apron away, and offer a humble bow to the pots. Behind you, the alcove's walls seem to pulse with ancestral presence, every tool, every fragrance a testament to centuries-old wisdom. You probably won't survive the day without one final joke. Infusion Station status mission steeped and accomplished. You return to the heart of the grove at last, light satchel empty but spirit-full, lantern unlit, as dusk's lavender glow settles across the leaves. You stand before the carved altar stone ringed with river pebbles, a place where final blessings seal the night's work with ash and salt. Historians still argue whether this concluding rite originated in Zulu traditions or evolved under colonial influence, but tonight you honor it as both a practical safeguard and a spiritual finale. Joke 1 drifts from your lips. Time to sprinkle more than fairy dust. Let's ash and salt our way to safety. You scoop fine ash from your clay dish, reserved ash from rituals past, and mix it with coarse sea salt harvested at low tide. Mainstream lore notes that ash's alkaline nature helps deter pests and mold, while salt's hygroscopic power draws moisture away, protecting dried herbs. You blend the two into a pale gray dust that feels like fine sand beneath your fingers. Kneeling, you touch the ash-salt mixture to your palm and whisper the first line of the final invocation. By Earth's gray grace and ocean's crystal tear. The words roll softly, guiding each pinch you cast. You toss a handful across the altar's perimeter, watching the powder settle into cracks and crevices, sealing your sacred space. Fringe whispers claim that salt rings channel protectors to guard the herbs from spiritual spoilage, though scholars still debate whether such beliefs serve symbolic or pragmatic aims. Joke 2 surfaces. Quietly, who knew? Seasoning could double as security. You continue moving clockwise around the altar stone, sprinkling small mounds at 4 cardinal points. Each mound receives a gentle tap with your fingertip, a rhythmic beat echoing the grove's own heartbeat. Mainstream records describe how these cardinal markers align the site with cosmic directions, lending balance to both ritual and remedy. You pause to breathe in the hush. The grove's nocturnal chorus has muted in anticipation of dawn. You place the remaining ash salt into your satchel for later use on storage jars. Beneath the altar, you scatter 3 crushed leaves of silverleaf sage, a mainstream historical detail, reminding you that sage wards off microbial invaders and invites clarity. The silver hairs glint faintly under twilight, a reminder of healing's dual practical and spiritual purpose. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some healer families tucked a single ghost root fragment into each storage jar's lid, believing its faint scent kept dreams sweet and fevers distant. Though modern ethnobotanists still debate whether this practice had measurable effects or served as comforting tradition. Joke 3 sneaks out jar lids smelling like ghost root. Now that's what I call spooktacular flavor. You pocket the fragment ideas for later infusion in tomorrow's preparations. You rise and retrieve your talisman, holding it over the altar just long enough for moonlight's last gleam to kiss its carvings. You murmur the final blessings, spirits within spirits above guard these gifts with unseen love. Historians still argue whether verbal seals carried true power or simply reaffirmed the healer's intention and mindfulness. Either way, intention underpins efficacy in plant and spirit. Stepping back, you survey the cleared altar ash salt lines, sage offerings, talisman glow. The grove feels at peace, as though exhaling after your careful work. You brush dust from your knees and retrieve a small pinch of powdered moonflower petal, saved from your final bundle as a delicate finishing touch. You cast it lightly into the air above the altar, where it flutters like tiny luminous snowflakes before settling softly. You tuck the talisman into your satchel, now cleansed and restored, ready for safekeeping. You lean forward and run a fingertip along the perimeter, ash salt, whispering gratitude to the grove, the moon, and every creature that accompanied you. Mainstream botanical guides reference such gratitude gestures as early forms of garden aromatherapy, blending human mindfulness with plant care. Fringe lore adds that gratitude honors ancestral voices woven into every leaf and root, though historians still debate whether ancient healers recorded thanks in written or oral form. Joke 4 emerges in a whisper. Gratitude and garden care. Two birds, one pebble. The grove seems to hum softly in response, a final shimmer across leaves as twilight yields to dawn's promise. You stand tall, satchel balanced, heart steady. You take one last look at the altar stone, its rings of ash and salt, like ripple marks on a pond surface. You inhale deeply, earthy ash, salty breeze, fading fragrance of sage and moonflower, each scent a testament to your journey from moonrise to calm conclusion. With a soft smile, you step away, leaving the grove in quiet splendor. Your path home is lit by stars dimming before sunrise, footsteps light, thoughts drifting toward rest. The final blessing is complete, the herbs secured, and the story woven into every grain of ash and salt. The night's work is done, and now you settle into stillness. Your breaths grow slow and even, each exhale releasing the tension of meticulous gathering and ritual care. Picture the grove's soft shadows dissolving under first light, herbs swaying gently like quiet sentinels, and carry that image into your mind's eye. Feel every muscle soften, shoulders lower, jaw unclench, fingers unfurl. Let the scent of sage and ghost root linger in the air around you, gently coaxing your thoughts toward calm. Allow the memory of playful jokes to fade into a warm smile, their lightness guiding you away from busy thoughts. Imagine yourself at the grove's edge where cool dawn air brushes your skin, mingling with the comforting weight of your satchel, now empty of herbs but full of purpose. Let that balance settle within you, knowing that every careful step, every whispered invocation has been honored and complete. Drift on the cadence of your own heartbeat, slow and steady, echoing the grove's rhythmic hush. Feel the earth's quiet support beneath you, grounding you in this moment of rest. Let thoughts of ashen salt, sage, and moonflower melt into gentle stillness. Soon, dreams will usher you into deeper realms, guided by herbs harvested under moonlight and blessed at dawn. Trust in the cycle you've honored, night's gathering into day's release. Softly now, close your eyes,